Frank Dello Stritto talking about movies.
Hey, Frank, I had a lovely woman, Sophie, on from Malta.
Oh, wow.
She's in London tonight, but she's from Malta. We talked about Malta and the Maltese Falcon. Is that from Malta?
If there was such a thing as the Maltese Falcon, I think it came from Malta. It's all explained by Sidney Greenstreet in the movie. And yes, it's from Malta. Supposedly a statuette made to honor the King of Spain that never quite got there and fell into the gutters of Paris until fortune hunters went chasing it, and thus the plot of the Maltese Falcon.
You're the man.
Okay.
What are we talking about tonight?
Let's see, you gave me two movies to talk about. I believe tomorrow night's movie is The Flying Deuces with Laurel Hardy, a 1939 movie.
Yep.
And the week after that, you're showing Voyage to the Planet of Prehistoric Women, a 1968 movie. So, let's see, Flying Deuces, directed by Edward Sutherland, who did a lot of good work, but he is most remembered for saying about Stan Laurel, "I would rather eat a tarantula than direct with him again."
Wow.
Sutherland, he worked with Abbott and Costello, he worked with Mae West, he worked with W.C. Fields, and he made this one film with Laurel and Hardy, and it didn't go well. Edward Sutherland was no stranger to comedy. He was one of the original Keystone Cops. And my guess is he wanted things done his way, and Stan Laurel wanted things done his way, and they never got quite got along. And when I was reading up on this today, the great comedy team of the 1930s was Laurel and Hardy. The great comedy team of the 1940s was Abbott and Costello. The great comedy team of the 1950s was Lewis and Martin. And in all three cases, the sappy, docile one on screen is the much tougher man off screen. You'd much rather be negotiating something with Hardy than with Laurel, than with Abbott than Costello, and with Dean Martin instead of Jerry Lewis. So, these professional simpletons on screen are often very shrewd and cagey men off screens. And Laurel, you would never know it by looking at the screen, but Laurel was the one who worked into the night on scripts and gags and worked hard on the production, whereas Hardy was, just happy to show up and do the best he could during filming, but he didn't get that involved in it. He never set up a production company like Stan Laurel did and all that.
Have another drink, Dean. Let's negotiate.
Maybe. And now, let me say, Hal Roach was one of the first producers of movies that went into television, and he brought with him his library, which meant two things to a little kid like me at the time: Little Rascals and Laurel and Hardy. And I grew up on the Little Rascals and Laurel and Hardy because Hal Roach did not waste time like a lot of studios did licensing his movies to television. So I grew up on those movies, and I probably saw Flying Deuces 100 times as a child, and all the other Laurel and Hardy movies. And of course, they were all cut down to fit in time frames. So it wasn't until years later when I saw the complete film, usually on VHS when they came out, that I realized there were whole sequences in there and major characters that I never saw because the movies were cut down to fit into an hour time slot. And this movie is about an hour plus long. So, take out 20 minutes for commercials. I missed at least 20 minutes of the movie when I was a kid. This is not a Hal Roach movie, which is why it's in the public domain. For a long time, the 1930s Laurel and Hardy movies were, except for the March of the Wooden Soldiers, or Babes in Toyland, whichever name you want to go by. Except for that one, they have been hard to come by on television, on DVD, or VHS. And that is starting to loosen up as an essential collection came out last year, and so people can actually get to see them. But for for a long time, decades, they haven't been easy to see on television or in the movies. But I grew up on them. They were on every day. Their short films would be on, like the Laurel and Hardy show would be an afternoon show. They'd be one of those TV hosts who would introduce the short films. And then the feature films, cut down to an hour, usually would play on the weekends. So I really miss them. This is the third Laurel and Hardy movie you've shown. You had Atoll K, and you had the war movie Great Guns, and that's them past their prime. This is probably one of the last movies they made in what you can say is their prime. It's I imagine for young viewers a lot of the visual gags are a little tired and all that, but this movie moves. You know, Flying Deuces is a play on Flying Aces. The movie's almost over before they get in the plane. There's a lot of plot before this. There's they joined the French Foreign Legion. There's all sorts of antics going on. So it's kind of lively, and I would say they're a little past their prime when they made this, but not by much. This is a pretty good movie. A couple of trivia things. Oliver Hardy met his wife while making this movie. She was what they used to call a script girl. Now they would call a continuity person. And I believe this is the only movie that Oliver Hardy's character dies in.
Oh.
And I mean, but it's a cheerful death. I mean, he comes back. So Lou Costello died in one of their movies, and that was The Time of Their Lives, where he dies in the beginning. He plays a ghost of the whole movie, and similar fate meets Oliver Hardy in this. But don't worry, he'll be back. And
well, let me ask you this about the movie. Before you realized that there was the tarantula quote,
yeah.
How did you feel when you first saw it? Was it enjoyable to you?
Oh, yes. I mean, often you read about people behind the scenes who just couldn't get along, that hated each other, swore they'd never work again. But when you see the movie, you wouldn't know it.
And you know, for those people, I've heard at least the musicians' side of it, they can't stand the work they did if there was animosity. They just hate it, and they won't watch it or listen to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, what does it do? It conjures up bad experiences. I mean,
right.
For me, Flying Deuces is something I used to watch on Saturday afternoons when I was a kid. For the people that made it, it was what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks work that they had 20 years ago, and maybe they don't need to be reminded of it. Maybe and you know, many performers are never happy with their own work, and then when it conjures up ill memories of they made me do that scene that way and I didn't want to do it, or I just didn't come across the way it would have if they let me do what I wanted to do. I can see that. So I have no idea if Laurel or Edward Sutherland ever watch this movie again. I don't know.
Well, next week I have Dave Monroe, and I'm going to try to give you more time. We'll attack Voyage to the Planet next week.
Okay, are we out of time?
We've got 30 seconds.
Okay, one other piece of trivia I dug up while online reading about this movie. There's a scene where Stan Laurel's character plays a harp, and the harp is actually played by Harpo Marx. And Harpo Marx gave Stan Laurel lessons, and so his hand movements would look natural.
That's amazing, man. That's pretty cool. Frank, we'll talk to you next week.
Okay. To Planet of Prehistoric Women next week. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
And watch your mailbox.
All right.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's Frank Dello Stritto and Sophie DiBattista. That's our show. The views and opinions on Visual Radio Live are those of Joe Viglione, the host, and his guests, Sophie and Frank Dello Stritto, not necessarily those of WinCAM, board of directors and staff, and our affiliate stations, of which there are many. We're expecting Dave Monroe next week from Air Traffic Controller out of Malden. Great band, great band. Thank you